Located at the end of a winding country road near Sonora, California, is a place called Indigene Reserves, where co-founder Jay Watson has created a sanctuary of calm and relaxation, while at the same time building a successful business that seems to perfectly coexist with its natural surroundings. Please join Carl Downbacker of Gold Rush News as he sits down with Jay to discuss his recipe for success in business and life.
Jay Watson, CEO, founder of Indigene Reserve.
Right. Well,
So let's start.
I was actually born and raised in Richmond, California.
Richmond.
And I attended my last year of high school was in El Cerrito High School.
Okay.
And then from there, I went to a junior college for a couple of years, enlisted into the Navy, and served on the submarine char for 4 years.
Okay.
And then when I came out of the service, I went back to college for a couple of more years. And at that point, I was beginning to develop a different business. And the business was radio towers and buildings on top of mountaintops.
Ah.
And so as I began to acquire those, the first one was actually with East Bay Municipal Utility District. It was called Round Top Mountain. And the second one was Grizzly Peak, again owned by East Bay Municipal Utility District. When I began to recognize that it was a pretty good business to be into, I started to acquire additional mountaintops in the area. One was Vollmer Peak. And at that point, I ended up with a partner at that time, and we started to develop other communication sites. In about 1967 or so, MCI was being formed, which is a communications company.
Sure.
I became a vice president of MCI, Pacific Coast, and then MCI finally was folded into MCI itself, which then was allowed by the Federal Communications Commission to do traffic between states. And I worked for them for about 4 years in that period of time, doing zoning, acquisition, and environmental impact reports.
You're kind of basically setting up a network.
Throughout the whole United States, right?
Okay.
I started acquiring and doing the zoning work for all, from Maine clear through into California. So I was extremely busy at that time with that group. I then stepped away from MCI, and part of the reason was MCI ended up with financial problems. And eventually they cured them within a short period of time, but they ended up with leases that they couldn't maintain. And so I made an offer to MCI to take over those leases, and actually then when they cured their problems, they came back and leased from me for the communication site. So it developed a fairly quickly a large business for myself. In the interim period of time, I ended up with 44 communication sites throughout California. And then American Towers came through and offered to purchase out my holdings, which I did sell. In that period of time, before that period of time, I always lived in Tuolumne County.
You did?
Okay, for 37 years. I just went back and calculated how long I've been here.
Wow.
For 37 years, Judy and I decided to raise the boys, our two sons, Joe and Ben, here in the county. And for me to travel back and forth, I ended up with an airplane and flew out of Columbia Airport to wherever my destination was.
There you go.
You know, and we did raise the boys here. I've been here 37 years. In 2005, how we got in the apple industry specifically was there was a family called the Abbott, Henry Abbott and Lorraine Abbott, and they had property adjacent to us, and Henry had gotten sick. And so Henry was going to try to subdivide the property into homes. We didn't want to see it happen, so Judy and I purchased the Abbott Ranch at that time.
Okay.
And then we ended up with apple trees.
Yeah. And you've
And
got how many trees? You got 20,000 or more?
Well, no, we do. We have over 20,000 now.
Okay.
At that time, we ended up with the concept of being organic, and we really had no idea what we were doing at that time. So we went through the 3-year period, came out organic, and then found that about 50% of the apples are blemished and that you couldn't take them to the store. We did not want to waste those apples.
Sure.
And so that's how we got into cider. The concept was cider. And in fact, we actually began the design work on the upper ranch to put a restaurant in at that location.
Wow.
And went through most of the design work and infrastructure, meaning water, sewer, electrical underground. We put in 3 miles of hiking trails. We ended up putting bridges in across any of the streams that were in there. And then the blow came to us was the county said, well, they were not going to give us a building permit until we corrected an easement problem. It took 2 years to correct the easement problem, but in the meantime, Bob Summers, who owned this property, which is 160 acres, came by and said, you got to look at this ranch and see it. And I drove in on the very road that you came in on, and I fell in love with it immediately.
Absolutely.
So we ended up buying this ranch and putting most of our effort into this and backed away from the effort on the upper ranch. This ranch has approximately 20,000 of the Granny Smith trees, and we also have 7,000 of the Honeycrisp varieties down here. The upper ranch is a bit of fooler in that there's 51 varieties, but when Henry's father, Austin Abbott, first owned that land, they planted the trees and they actually grafted 3 different trees or types of apples per tree.
Together.
So we get the 51 varieties, but that doesn't mean much. So from that, what we do is we take all of those particular apples and bring them down to this ranch, and we actually are certified organic, and so the product is certified organic from those red apples. Okay. We have another product, which is the one that's in the stores, and the ones in the store is in a aluminum can. Right. And that one we've produced in this last year about little over 12,000 cases of it, which is about 300,000 bottles. And we intend to kick it up to about 1 million or so. In the meantime, we are developing other products. We have a blackberry cider we will be producing this coming year. And we are also have moved into brandy, and the excess product, we take it into our still, and we distill it up to 92% alcohol, and then we cut it back to 40% alcohol. We age that for at least 3 to 4 years in 53-gallon barrels, and we are selling that in the stores now as well as at this location. The new product also will be vodka. Vodka we just started actually last week, beginning the major distillation of that, and that will be under the label of Front Porch. And the question has always been to us, how big can we get? Well, the maximum we can ever produce from this facility is 2 million bottles, and that's just the physical size of the location without branching out. So the long-term plan is to find someplace in Tuolumne County where we can do additional growth, in other words. Okay. And that will, actually we're looking at it from the standpoint of transportation coming in, and also the ability to have more personnel available that are closer drive to the facility. We'll still always remain to have this facility in operation. We'll probably always make about 1 million bottles at a time, and we'll always have the tasting room open and the tours. On this property, even though it's 160 acres, quite a bit of it's in picnic grounds. Okay. We have hiking trails here. You can go hike out to Phoenix Lake. We have an old gold mine on the ranch that you can hike out to and look at. And from one end of the property to the other, it's 1.25 miles. Okay. So if a person wants to hike, they can almost hike 2.5 miles and just go straight.
There you go.
Okay.
So now, to get another facility, what would that mean in terms of penetration into the market share? How would you describe the market share in this product line or the others? Now you're really offering several now, so how would you describe that?
Yeah, the market share right now is really fairly small at this point for us. Okay. And it's the tremendous amount of acceptance by the general public in Tuolumne County. Right now we only service out to Jackson, of course, over into Murphy's, up the grade there. We go down to Modesto to Riverbank. Okay. And then we are in some bars and restaurants. Some of it sounds far, it's clear to San Diego. Part of the county's requirements, for example, agriculture, and they're going to change this hopefully by February, and that is we cannot bring anything in from another county. They have waived it because we did have a shortage last year on apples, and hopefully they turn that concept around so that we can begin to bring products in from other counties to help overcome the shortage. A lot of the apples that we did get this year to help us came out of Watsonville.
Oh.
Organic, we were strictly organic products. So.
Yes. Now, how do you see some of the water challenges affecting your business?
Well, that's interesting. We have 64 minor inches rights, which is, we probably only use 2 of those during the year. And we draw our water from Lyons Reservoir, and we had expected to be shut off this year completely. So to protect ourselves, we put in 4 wells when we first purchased the ranch. And the wells are high producing wells. They're around over 300 gallons a minute.
What advice would you give to young people? Let's say if you're a professor today, entering the world of commerce, what would you say, Professor Watson, to a class about this industry, some of the challenges you've experienced, the various positions you've held?
Sure. You can do it 2 ways. You can do it where you just start out and grow slowly. You're not going to make a huge amount of profit out of it. Most of it's an industry where you're subject to everything in agriculture, all the farming problems and so you're going to either have to create a product that somebody else is going to join in with you on as a financial backer, or you're going to have to do a lot of other things ahead of time to create the financial capability of putting this together. Because to do this in the period of time we purchased this ranch in 2007, began to revitalize it in 2008, and then take this building and completely tear it apart, put it back together again, buy all of the tanks, all of the pressing equipment, the bottling lines, order the bottles and everything. And the problem with all that is it's cash up front. There's no income.
Yeah.
And so this is the first year we've had income coming in.
Really?
On it.
That's,
so
what, 8 years you've been
right.
in it? 8?
So you really have to have a very good financial foundation, or you do like most people do, they start small and just grow from it.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. So where do you want to see this company in 10 years? Kind of like a closing comment.
Sure. Well, this company will be handed over to my sons.
Okay.
And both my sons do work here. Joe was a school teacher, and I asked him if he wanted to give me a hand, and he said, yep, he sure did.
Sure.
And then Ben used to be a race car driver, but now he's building race car engines. And he does work here 3 days a week to provide us engineering capabilities and for the equipment that we need in the future, as well as maintaining the thing. So in 10 years, I'd like to see this business grow to at least probably 3 to 4 million bottles a year minimum.
Jay, an excellent product.
Okay,
Great,
thank you
man.
very much.
Thank you for your time with us.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you again.
Great, Carl. Thank you.